Back in the good old days of Warcraft 3 Dota All-Stars, being on either the Sentinel or Scourge side actually somewhat mattered. Because despite being on the southwest or northeast corners of the map, the original rules of the game force you to only pick heroes that represented their specific factions. The Sentinel team included heroes like Sven, Crystal Maiden, and Luna, whereas the Scourge represented heroes like Axe, Invoker, and Queen of Pain. And in order to override this rule, you needed to type in a specific chat code that enabled the ability for all players to pick whatever they wanted, which obviously, as we now know in Dota 2, became the normal way of playing the game since people weren't too fond of this needless limitation. Nowadays, whenever you queue up and find a game, you never really think too much about which side you're playing. I mean, whether it's Dire or Radiant, I don't really care. I'm just gonna be picking TE anyways because I'm a one-trick. I mean, both of them obviously have their differences, such as the placements of neutral camps, spots for vision control, and just straight up the overall design and layout of that specific side. But at the end of the day, they're more or less just known as the good guys and bad guys designed around this particular map. But what if I told you that every time you lost the game on Dire and won a game on Radiant, that was exactly how it was supposed to go, as Radiant always held a favorable outcome? Statistics prove that every single patch of every single year of every single TI that has ever happened to ever, the Radiant side has always somehow had an advantage over the Dire side. Look up any Dota 2 player statistics, whether it's a pro player or non-pro player or even that filthy casual who just plays nothing but turbo all day, and you will notice that their Radiant win rate will always be somewhat higher than their Dire win rate. And although this difference may seem a little minimalistic and overdramatic, it is still an advantage that shouldn't go unnoticed, as it has remained strongly consistent throughout the 10+ years of Dota 2's ongoing history. But the real question is, why exactly is it like this? Well, first off, to the less informed, Radiant and Dire may just look like the polar opposites to each other, built around the same exact map just with different color schemes, but anybody that has played a single game of Dota knows that this is not exactly the case. There are a lot, and I mean a lot of differences that may seem minimal, but actually tend to be quite game-changing, especially when it comes to the higher tier levels of play. So basically, if you've never won a TI before, don't worry about it. None of this shit actually matters. We're all idiots. For instance, Radiant is known to have better vision control, as the hill ward spots cover a lot more ground, especially around these highly contested entrances, making it a whole lot more difficult to apply pressure onto the enemy Radiant safe laner over the Dire safe laner. In addition to that, Dire's triangle has more openings and entrances than Radiant's, causing invasions to Dire's jungle to be a lot more susceptible, as well as the Radiant's neutral creep camps are generally more accessible in terms of distance. For example, the mid laner for Radiant side can easily farm close to his lane without losing valuable lane XP, and even has the ability to stack the nearest creep camp without having to leave the lane at all. And most importantly, with Roshan being the main primary objective, Radiant will most of the time always have the significant advantage for claiming the first Roshan kill, as most Dota 2 games will naturally shape themselves up with both sides claiming their first towers in the offlane, which means around the time when Roshan is being contested, it will be at the Dire side but under Radiant's newly claimed territory. But with all of these minor differences kept in mind, I wouldn't exactly blame you if you thought that these changes seemed very subtle and not very game-changing at all. I mean, sure, we could agree that some specific things give Radiant just a little bit of a slight edge with its advantages, but it's not exactly on the same level caliber as, let's say, Counter-Strike, where specific maps are heavily in favor for one side over the other. I would honestly agree with you if you thought that none of these things actually mattered at all, because I truly think that the real reasoning behind this persistent advantage comes from a much more deeper understanding, not only in-game, but psychologically as well. You see, if we were to completely mirror the map perfectly even for both Radiant and Dire, it is still believed that Radiant would still hold a slight advantage due to the nature of MOBA games being portrayed from this very specific camera angle. It's not exactly bird's eye view looking straight down, sort of like looking at a map, but more tilted to the point of being able to see more northeastern. Because of this, players on Radiant side are basically able to see more when advancing towards the enemy, whereas Dire players not only see less due to the point of view, but also because of the HUD being in the way, resulting in more focus on camera panning. From a psychological standpoint, as you progress, you're also always moving upwards as you advance through the map, while the Dire has to move downwards, which can feel quite odd. Players believe that playing on Radiant side feels somewhat natural, whereas playing on Dire tends to throw you off just a tiny bit, almost as if you're playing in reverse. These theories may sound silly to some people, but it also does sort of make sense, since League also shares this exact same issue. Even in this game, where less advantage advantages are being given towards blue side and a more perfectly symmetrical mirrored map is created, blue side still manages to barely gain a slight advantage when it comes to win probability. Hell, even ARAM, a game mode in League that is literally just a complete bloodbath in one single lane the entire game with not a single other objective on the map, also holds an advantage towards the blue side for some odd reason. Let me know what you guys think. Do you feel as if you're more comfortable on Radiant or Dire? Also, let me know if you're one of those rare people who actually managed to get a higher win rate percentage on Dire, because I'll be honest, I was trying to find at least one single person like that, and I could not find a single person, although I guarantee there's at least some people out there. All in all, I think what we can all take from this is the good guys always win. Unless I'm on your team.